The grand hall of the galactic palace shimmered with gold and silver banners. 1,000 alien nobles stood in silence, their eyes locked on the center stage. The air was thick with tension, the kind that could start a war or end one. At the center, the alien king sat on his towering throne, his jeweled crown catching the light. Beside him stood his only daughter, Princess Avelia, her face hidden behind a silver veil. Rumors about her had spread through the galaxy for years. They called her the Barren Princess, a title she never asked for. They said she could not give an heir, and in her father's eyes, that made her worthless. Today was the signing of a fragile peace treaty between the alien kingdom and humanity. It had taken years of battles, thousands of lives lost, and endless negotiations to reach this moment. The human representative was not a politician or a noble, but a decorated soldier named Captain Elias Ward. He had fought in the bloodiest battles of the war and had been chosen for his courage. Elias stood tall, his human uniform spotless, but his eyes wary. He had no idea what the alien king had planned for this final ceremony. The alien king rose from his throne, his booming voice echoing through the hall, to seal our peace. He said, "I offer my daughter to the human captain." Gasps filled the hall. Both human and alien guests, shocked. Princess Avelia's head turned slightly, her eyes flashing in disbelief behind the veil. She had not been told of this. The king's voice carried a cruel edge. "Avelia cannot give an heir, but she will serve as a symbol of our unity." The words were dressed as honor, but the meaning was insult. Elias knew it too. It was a gift meant to humiliate. The alien nobles smirked, thinking the human would refuse, but Elias stepped forward. "Without hesitation, I accept," he said firmly. The smirks faded, replaced by murmurs. Avelia looked at him, confused. Her father's eyes narrowed. He expected shame, but instead saw calm defiance in the human's face. The ceremony ended with forced applause, the king waving them away like finished business. Avelia followed Elias out of the hall, her steps slow, her voice low. "Why did you accept me?" Elias glanced at her. "Because you are not a thing to be given away. You are a person." She said nothing, unsure if his words were pity or truth. The journey to Earth was silent. Avelia sat in the passenger seat of the small human shuttle, her gaze fixed on the stars. She had grown up surrounded by wealth and servants, yet had never felt free. Now she was heading to a strange world, stripped of her title's power. Elias kept his distance, giving her space, but he noticed her watching him when she thought he wasn't looking. She was trying to understand this man who had accepted a life with someone the galaxy had already judged. When they arrived on Earth, Elias took her not to a palace, but to a small, quiet home on the edge of a forest. The air smelled of pine, and the sound of birds filled the silence. "This is your home now," he said simply. She looked around, puzzled. No guards, no servants. He shook his head. No chains either. Her lips parted, but she didn't reply. She wandered through the small house, touching the wooden walls, the books on shelves, the simple kitchen. It was nothing like the cold, polished marble halls of the palace. And yet, something about it felt alive. The first night was quiet. Avelia sat by the window, watching the stars. Elias worked at his desk, writing reports for the human government. Finally, she asked, "Why would you tie yourself to someone who cannot give you an heir?" He looked up from his work, his voice steady. "Because you are not broken, Avelia." Her chest tightened at the words. No one had ever said that to her before, but deep inside, she didn't believe him. Her whole life had been proof of her father's disappointment. And now she was here, with a man she didn't know. In a world far from home, still, something about Elias felt different from every other man she had met. She didn't trust him yet, but she also didn't hate him, and that was new. That night, as Elias prepared to sleep, He made a call in a hushed voice. Avelia couldn't hear the whole conversation. But she caught one sentence. "I'll prove them all wrong," Elias whispered. Her heart skipped a beat. She didn't know what he meant, but for the first time in years, she felt a spark of something she thought she had lost. Hope. Asterisk, the days after their arrival on Earth passed quietly. Elias kept his distance, giving Avelia space to adjust. He didn't try to force conversation, and he didn't demand gratitude. But the silence between them felt heavy. Avelia wandered through the small house like a ghost. Moving from room to room without purpose, she spent most of her time in the bedroom Elias had prepared for her. It was not a palace chamber, but it was warm, with soft blankets and sunlight streaming through the window. Still, to her, it felt like another cage. Back in the royal palace, her chambers had been massive but cold, filled with gold and glass. Here, everything was made of wood and cloth, simple and worn from years of use. She touched the carved edges of the furniture, tracing her fingers along. The grain, it was strange this place was far from the luxury she had known. Yet there was something honest in its walls. No servants entered without knocking. No spies hid behind doors. No father watched her with cold judgment. Still, she didn't feel free. Not yet. Elias would come and go throughout the day. Sometimes he brought back food from the local town. Sometimes just firewood. He always greeted her politely, but never lingered. Avelia wondered if he saw her the same way her father did Broken. One morning, she decided to explore the edge of the forest behind the house. The air was crisp, the ground soft under her boots. She found herself standing by a small stream. Watching the water rush over smooth stones, for a moment, she felt a strange peace. Then she saw her reflection in the water. The silver of her eyes, the faint glow of her alien skin. It reminded her she didn't belong here that evening. Achilles noticed she hadn't eaten the food he left on the table. "You should eat," he said gently. She didn't look at him. "Why do you care?" "Because you're my responsibility now," he replied. Her lips tightened. No one ever wanted that responsibility before. Elias leaned on the table, meeting her gaze. Then maybe they were fools. She looked away quickly, not ready to face the warmth in his voice that night as she sat on the bed. She reached under her pillow and pulled out a small, glowing crystal. It was the only thing she had taken from the palace. Its light pulsed faintly, as if it had a heartbeat. She held it close, feeling a strange energy in her veins. This crystal was more than just a keepsake. It was the last piece of her mother. Her mother had told her it could heal, though she had never believed it. Now, she wasn't sure. She had been feeling weaker lately, her skin growing pale, her breaths shallow. She didn't want Elias to see. She didn't want him to think she was even more useless than the rumors claimed. One afternoon, she tried to stand from the chair, but her knees buckled. The world spun, and her vision blurred. She clutched the crystal tightly, her body trembling. Then, everything went dark. When she opened her eyes, she was lying on the bed. Elias sat beside her, his brows drawn in worry. "You collapsed," he said. "What's going on?" She tried to hide the crystal, but his eyes had already seen the faint glow under her hand. "What is that?" he asked. "It's nothing," she whispered. "That's not nothing," he said firmly. "Tell me." Her voice trembled. "It's all I have left of my family." Elias didn't push further, but he didn't look convinced. He reached out, resting a hand on her arm. "If you're sick, I can help." She shook her head. "No one can help." But deep down, a small voice in her mind wondered if he might be different. No one had ever tried to help without wanting something in return. That night, she heard him making another call. His voice low but urgent. "She's getting worse," he said. "And I think that crystal is the key." Avelia closed her eyes, pretending to sleep. Her heart raced not from fear, but from something unfamiliar. Someone was fighting for her. The next morning, Avelia woke to the faint smell of fresh bread and tea. Elias was in the kitchen, his back to her as he prepared breakfast. She stayed in the doorway, watching him move with quiet focus. It was strange he wasn't like the servants in the palace who avoided eye contact and obeyed without thought. Elias didn't treat her as royalty, but he didn't treat her as a burden either. When he noticed her, he simply said, "You should eat," handing her a plate. She took it without a word, but her eyes kept drifting to his, searching for something. The crystal lay hidden in the folds of her dress, its soft glow a constant reminder of her weakness. She could feel the energy in it, warm yet untamed. Her mother had once whispered to her in secret that this stone came from the heart of Illyria. It's a sacred alien relic. They said it had the power to restore what was lost, but only if placed in the hands of one who truly cared. Avelia had never believed such things, but now, as her body grew weaker, the thought refused to leave her mind. Elias seemed to be thinking about it too. He had made another call late at night. And though she didn't hear every word, she caught fragments. "She's fading," he had said. "I need someone who understands alien medicine. And I think the crystal is important." She wanted to ask him about it. But she also feared his answer. No one had ever fought for her before. The thought of trusting someone again scared her more than the illness itself. By midday, Elias returned from town with supplies, but this time he wasn't alone. A tall figure with deep green skin and silver eyes followed him inside. Avelia stepped back, instantly defensive. "Who is this?" "This," Elias said calmly, "is Dr. Barren, half-human, half-alien, and the best healer I know." Barren's voice was gentle. "I'm here to help, but only if you allow it." Avelia hesitated, her hand tightening around the crystal in her pocket. Finally, she gave a small nod. The examination was unlike anything she'd experienced. No cold instruments, no harsh commands. Instead, Barren placed a hand over her heart and closed his eyes. A soft light passed between them. After a moment, his expression darkened. "You've been poisoned." Her breath caught. "Poisoned? By who?" "Someone close to you, a long time ago," Barren said quietly. "It's been weakening you for years, making it impossible for your body to bear children." Her mind raced. She didn't need to guess who was behind it. Her father had always seen her as a failed heir. Maybe he made sure she would stay that way. Elias stepped forward, anger flashing in his eyes. "Can it be undone?" Barren's gaze shifted to the crystal. "Yes, Sif, that is what I think it is." Avelia slowly took it out, the light pulsing brighter as it touched the air. Barren's eyes widened. "The heart of Illyria." "I've only read about it." He explained that the crystal could cleanse her blood and restore what was stolen. But there was a cost. It would drain the energy of whoever used it for her. Elias didn't hesitate. "Do it?" Avelia turned to him sharply. "No, you don't know what it could do to you." "I don't care," he said. "I won't stand by while you fade away." Barren prepared the ritual, placing the crystal in a shallow bowl filled with silver liquid. The light from it grew so bright it painted the walls in gold. Elias sat beside Avelia, taking her trembling hand in his. "This might hurt," Barren warned. Avelia's breath quickened. "Why are you doing this?" "You don't even know me." Elias's voice was steady. "I don't need to know everything to care." Her eyes stung with tears she hadn't expected. When the crystal touched her skin, a wave of heat rushed through her body. It burned and healed at the same time. Memories of her childhood, her mother's laughter, the cold gaze of her father, everything flooded back. The pain was intense, but through it, she felt Elias's hand holding hers tightly. The glow filled the room until she could barely see. Then, slowly, the light faded. Avelia gasped, her chest rising with steady, strong breaths. For the first time in years, she felt alive. Barren stepped back, exhaustion clear on his face. "It worked," he said. "You'll need time to recover, but your body is whole again." Elias smiled faintly, relief washing over him. But before they could celebrate, Marin's voice turned serious. "You should know word of this will reach the palace of Elias." Heart sank. Her father would not take this quietly. That night, as she sat by the window, watching the stars, she felt a strange mix of fear and hope. Elias stood behind her, silent but present. For the first time, she didn't feel entirely alone. And somewhere deep inside, a dangerous thought began to take root. If her father found out, she could give an heir. Everything would change. 3 days had passed since the healing. Avelia's strength was slowly returning. She could walk without her legs shaking. She could breathe without pain. There was color in her skin again, and for the first time in years, she could sleep without waking in the night. Elias noticed every small change. He didn't comment on them, but she saw the relief in his eyes. Marin had left the morning after the ritual, warning them to be careful. "Your father's eyes are everywhere," he had said before leaving. Elias had brushed it off in front of her, but she could tell. He was worried. On the 4th night, the warning arrived. A sharp knock echoed through the quiet house. Elias opened the door cautiously, finding no one there. Instead, a small black box lay on the doorstep. He picked it up and carried it inside. Avelia stood behind him, watching as he set it on the table. The box opened with a soft click, releasing a thin beam of light into the air. A holographic figure flickered to life. It was her father, the king. His voice was cold and steady. "So, my discarded daughter still lives. And more than that, she has been repaired." Avelia froze, her hands curling into fists. She had heard that voice her entire life. Filled with authority and cruelty, the king's eyes shifted to Elias. "Human, you are playing with something you cannot keep." Elias didn't flinch. "She is not a thing." The king's lips curved in something between a smirk and a sneer. "You think you've won her loyalty? You think you can defy me?" "I don't care about you," Elias said evenly. "I care about her." The king's voice hardened. "Then hear this: when I want her back, I will take her back, and nothing in your weak world will stop me." The message ended, the hologram dissolving into the air. Silence filled the room, broken only by the faint hum of the projector fading. Avelia's shoulders trembled, though her face remained calm. "He knows," she whispered. Elias turned to her. "Let him know." Her eyes snapped to his. "You don't understand when my father sets his mind to something. He gets it, no matter the cost." Elias's jaw tightened. "Then he'll learn humans don't give up what matters to them." For the rest of the night, neither of them slept. Elias sat by the door with his weapon close at hand. Avelia remained near the window, staring at the stars. She remembered the way her father's eyes had looked, calculating, certain. Her whole life she had been taught to obey, to bow her head, to never question. But something had shifted in her since the healing. Elias's words still echoed in her mind. "You are not broken." The next morning, Elias prepared supplies. He checked their communication lines and reinforced the door locks. When Avelia asked what he was doing, he said, "Making sure if your father tries anything, we'll be ready." She wanted to tell him it was pointless, that no one could stop the king's reach. But she bit back the words, for some reason. Seeing Elias prepare for a fight on her behalf gave her a strange sense of safety. Later that day, a small human courier arrived with a sealed envelope. Elias opened it, scanning the message quickly before handing it to her. It was written in the alien royal language, one she had learned as a child. Her father's handwriting was unmistakable. "Daughter, I will give you one chance to return to the palace before I take matters into my own hands." Her throat tightened. There was no kindness in the words, only command. She folded the paper and set it aside. "I'm not going." That night, she found herself telling Elias pieces of her childhood she had never shared with anyone. How her father had once forbidden her from leaving her chambers for months. How every attempt she made to please him had been ignored. How the title Barren, princess, had been repeated so often that she began to believe it. Elias listened without interrupting. When she finished, he said, "He doesn't deserve you as a daughter." She blinked, startled. No one had ever said that before. Avelia didn't know what the coming days would bring. Her father's warning hung over them like a storm cloud, but deep inside, for the first time, she felt a spark of defiance. If he came for her, he would not find the same silent, obedient daughter he had cast aside. This time, she would fight. And she knew Elias would fight beside her. 2 weeks had passed since the king's warning. Avelia's health had improved so much that she could walk for hours without feeling tired. Her skin had regained its natural glow, and her silver eyes no longer looked dim. She spent more time outside, exploring the edge of the forest and watching the river. Elias often joined her. Though he never pushed her to talk about her father again, the shadow of the king's threat still hung over them. But for a little while, life felt calm. One quiet morning, Avelia sat at the small kitchen table, sipping a warm drink. She noticed her hands trembling slightly. At first, she thought it was nothing, maybe the cool morning air. But then, a strange wave of nausea hit her. She stood quickly, nearly knocking over the cup. Elias rushed in from outside. "What's wrong?" I just need some air," she said, brushing past him. She walked into the fresh morning breeze, trying to steady her breathing. It had been years since she felt such a thing. It was almost unfamiliar. Over the next few days, the feeling grew stronger. Sometimes she would wake in the middle of the night with her heart racing. Other times, the scent of certain foods made her dizzy. Elias noticed, his eyes narrowing with concern. "You should see a doctor," he suggested. Avelia hesitated, remembering Marin's warning that her recovery might bring unexpected changes. But something deep inside urged her to know the truth. Elias made arrangements for Marin to return. The healer arrived 2 days later. Carrying his medical kit, Avelia sat on the edge of the bed while Elias stood nearby, his arms folded. Marin worked quietly, running gentle scans with alien technology. Minutes passed in silence until Marin stopped, staring at the small device in his hand. "What is it?" Elias asked sharply. Marin's gaze flicked to Avelia, his expression unreadable. Finally, he said softly, "You're with child." Avelia froze, her breath catching. For a moment, she thought she had misheard. "What?" She whispered. Marin repeated the words, "You're pregnant, Avelia." Elias blinked, the weight of the statement settling over him slowly. Avelia's hands went to her stomach instinctively. Her mind sponge. She had been told all her life that she could never bear a child. Her father's cruelty, the years of believing she was broken, all came flooding back. But now, it was gone, replaced with a truth that felt almost impossible. Elias knelt beside her, his voice quiet but full of emotion. "You're sure?" Marin nodded. "There's no mistake." Avelia's eyes glistened. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Elias replied. "This is yours to feel." But she could see in his eyes that he was just as overwhelmed as she was. For a few moments, the three of them sat in silence, the only sound the faint hum of Marin's scanner. Then, Marin's expression darkened. "You both need to understand what this means." Avelia looked at him. "That I'm going to be a mother." "Yes," Marin said, "but also that the king will see this as a direct challenge to him. He will not allow an airborne outside his control." Elias's jaw tightened. "Then he'll have to get through me first." Avelia felt a strange mix of fear and pride at his words. By nightfall, the news had already reached the wrong ears. Avelia stood by the window when the communicator on the desk crackled to life. Her father's voice filled the room, colder than ever. "So it's true," he said. "My worthless daughter carries an heir." Avelia's grip on the windowsill tightened. The king continued, "You think you can hide from me? That child belongs to the royal bloodline, and I will take it." Elias stepped forward, his voice firm. "You'll take nothing." The king's laugh was sharp and cruel. "You have no idea what storm you've invited. Human?" The connection cut abruptly, leaving only silence. Avelia turned to Elias, her voice trembling but determined. "He will come for me. Then we prepare." Elias said without hesitation. She searched his face for fear, but found none, only resolve in that moment. She realized something: her father might have power, armies and influence across the stars. But here, in this small house by the forest, she had something stronger, someone willing to stand between her and the galaxy itself. That night, as she lay in bed, her hand rested on her stomach. She thought of the child growing inside her. It was more than just life. What's proof? Proof that her father had been wrong. Proof that she was not broken. And perhaps proof that love could exist in the most unlikely places. But in the darkness outside, far above the earth, alien ships began to stir. The king was not going to wait long. The calm would not last. The storm was coming. The night sky over Earth looked calm, but in the cold darkness beyond the planets' orbit, it was far from peaceful. From the edge of the solar system, a massive alien fleet emerged from hyperspace. Their silver hulls glinted under distant starlight, weapons locked and ready. At the heart of the fleet was the royal flagship, a monstrous vessel shaped like a blade cutting through the void, and aboard it sat the alien king, his face hard with fury. His voice carried across the command deck, "Set course for Earth, no delay, back on the forest edge." Avelia woke with a start. She didn't know why, but something in her chest felt heavy. She stepped outside, the crisp air biting her skin. In the distance, she could hear the faint hum of human defense drones moving into the sky. Inside the house, Elias was already dressed in his uniform, securing his weapons. "They're coming," he said, not as a warning, but as a fact. Her heart tightened. "My father and his whole fleet," Elias confirmed. "They'll be here within a day." The human government had been monitoring alien activity for weeks. Now, their defense networks lit up with red alerts. Earth's military command sent a secure message to Elias: "Protect the asset at all costs." Avelia heard the words and felt a sting. "ASEC," she repeated quietly. Elias turned to her, his voice firm. "That's not what you are to me." She wanted to believe him, and deep down, she did. But the fear of her father's power still clung to her. Throughout the day, preparations began. Elias reinforced the house's security systems, though he knew it would never hold against a full assault. Human military forces started moving toward their location, building a defensive perimeter. Avelia watched the soldiers from the window, their armored suits reflecting the pale sunlight. She realized most of them had never seen an alien princess before. They didn't know her story. They didn't know she had been thrown away like trash. But now, they were risking their lives for her, and for the child she carried. By nightfall, the first sign of the king's approach filled the sky. A massive shadow blotted out the stars as the alien fleet descended toward Earth's orbit. Human warships rose to meet them, engines roaring like thunder. Avelia stood beside Elias on the porch, watching faint flashes of light far above. The battle hadn't started yet, but she could feel the tension in the air. "It's not too late to run," Elias said quietly. She shook her head. "If I run now, he'll hunt me forever. Better to face him here." Hours later, a transmission came through the king's face, appeared on a large holoscreen at the human military command post. "Return my daughter and the unborn heir, or Earth will burn," he said coldly. Elias stepped forward before the human generals could speak. "She's not yours anymore," he said, "and neither is the child." The king's eyes narrowed. "You dare speak as if you have any claim." "I don't speak as a claim," Elias replied. "I speak as someone who will die before I let you touch them." The communication ended, and moments later, the first shots were fired in orbit. The sky lit up with streaks of red and blue as energy blasts tore through space. The sound of distant explosions rolled across the forest. Avelia flinched at every tremor, her hands instinctively going to her stomach. Elias moved to her side, placing a reassuring hand over hers. "We'll get through this," he said, though she could hear the tension in his voice. That night, Earth cities prepared for evacuation. The alien fleet was stronger than expected, pushing human forces back bit by bit in the command center. Generals debated whether to hand Avelia over to stop the destruction. Elias overheard them and slammed his fist on the table. "You give her to him, and he'll still destroy you. It's not about peace. It's about control." The room went silent. They all knew he was right. By dawn, the king's flagship descended into the upper atmosphere. Its massive shadow swept across the land like a storm cloud. Elias stood outside with his weapon ready. His gaze fixed on the sky, Avelia stepped out to join him, her silver eyes reflecting the morning light. "You should be inside," he said. She shook her head. "If my father is coming for me, I'll face him standing." Elias looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. In the distance, the deep rumble of the flagship's engines grew louder. The storm had arrived. The ground shook as the alien king's flagship descended through the clouds. Its shadow swallowed the forest, casting the small house and the human military camp into darkness. The sound of its engines was like a roar from another world, deep and heavy. Soldiers raised their weapons, their eyes locked on the massive silver vessel above. Elias stood at the front, unflinching, beside him. Avelia's silver eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, her hand resting on her stomach. A beam of golden light shot down from the belly of the ship. It formed a shimmering platform, and within moments, the alien king himself descended. He was tall, draped in royal armor, his crown a twisting design of metal and jewels. His expression was carved from stone, cold and unyielding around him. A squad of elite alien guards spread out, their weapons humming with deadly energy. The king's gaze fell on his daughter first. "So," he said, his voice deep and sharp, "the broken one stands before me whole." Avelia straightened her back, refusing to look away. "I was never broken," she said, her voice calm but strong. His eyes narrowed. "You carry my heir, and yet you defy me. It's not your heir," Elias cut in. Stepping forward, the king's glare shifted to him. "And you are the fool who thinks a human can claim what belongs to a royal bloodline." Elias didn't flinch. "I don't claim her. I stand with her. There's a difference." The tension thickened, soldiers on both sides ready to fire. At a single word, the king raised his hand slightly, halting his guards. "You have one chance," he said coldly. "Bring her to me, and your planet will be spared." Elias shook his head. "If you want her, you'll have to go through me and everyone here." The king's lips curled into a cruel smile. "Then so be it." Before the first shot could be fired, Avelia stepped forward, her voice carried across the clearing, steady and clear. "Father, I will not return with you," she said. "I will not raise my child in a palace built on fear. You speak like a human." He spat. She lifted her chin. "No, I speak like someone who is finally free." The king's jaw tightened, his pride wounded. He turned to his guards, about to give the order, but then something happened he hadn't expected. From the edge of the forest, more human soldiers emerged. Above them, human warships broke through the clouds, their cannons glowing with power. The king's eyes darted to the sky. He hadn't realized how quickly the humans had regrouped. Elias's voice cut through the air. "You can start a war, but you won't win it here." For a long moment, no one moved. the king's pride battled. With his reason, if he attacked now, he might take his daughter, but the cost would be enormous. And the galaxy was watching. Any sign of weakness or failure could shatter his control over other worlds. Finally, he stepped back, his voice low. But Venomous, this is not over. He turned, walking toward the golden beam, his guards following. Before the light carried him back to his ship, he looked at Avelia one last time. Enjoy your freedom while it lasts. The flagship rose into the sky, disappearing into the clouds. The soldiers lowered their weapons, and the air felt lighter. Elias turned to Avelia, a small smile breaking through the tension. "You did it," he said, her voice softened. "No, we did it." In the weeks that followed, life slowly returned to normal. The human government provided protection for Avelia and Elias. Word of the confrontation spread across the galaxy. Some called her a traitor to her kind. Others called her something else entirely, the Mother of Peace. She ignored the whispers, focusing on the life growing inside her. One quiet evening, Elias found her standing at the edge of the forest, watching the sunset, thinking about him. He asked. She shook her head. Thinking about the future, he stepped beside her, his hand finding hers. For the first time, she said softly, "I'm not afraid of it." As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in gold, and Crimson Avelia felt the faintest kick from within her. She smiled, resting her hand over her stomach. This child would be born into a world where its mother had chosen her own path, where love had been stronger than power, and as the stars began to shine above them, Avelia knew that no matter what came next, they had already won.